was a day-by-day accounting of how the company came to be. I had every company newsletter that highlighted every milestone. I had employee reflections after 9/11 saying how people felt after the towers went down. I had Elon's resignation note to the company when he left the company.
All right, this is a very special edition of the Form Your Own Pack podcast with my good friend Jimmy Soni, who we literally just met, but that's okay. We're good, fast friends now.
Exactly.
Jimmy,
I'm
thanks
sure
for
you
coming.
call all of them special editions.
This is special. I'm gonna put like graphics up that are like from Anchorman where they flash special alert, breaking news. So Jimmy is the author of a book by the name of The Founders by so ironic, and a common friend of ours, Mark Gerald, who is a pretty well-known literary agent, introduced us. Well, he facilitated. I used Mark to meet you. Jimmy,
Hey,
thank you for
any
joining us.
way that works, and Mark is a total mensch, and so that's great.
All right, so for people that don't know, who is Jimmy Soni and what is The Founders?
Man, those are deep questions, and it's pretty late. No, I'm kidding.
You
I'm an
can keep it
author.
surface level.
No, I'm an author who has done a bunch of different books, and my latest one is called The Founders. It's the story of PayPal and the entrepreneurs who shaped Silicon Valley. And for your listeners, Founders Pack people, they will know the PayPal Mafia most likely, which includes people like Max Levchin, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, David Sachs, Reid Hoffman, and several hundred others. What happened in the world, just for the 60 seconds of context, is they had so much success that it obscured the place where they had their first win, which was PayPal, because they were very young and they didn't know what they were doing. And the company succeeded by the skin of its teeth. Because of their success, people focused on their later life, but nobody went back and interviewed them about what happened in the early days. And I had the great fortune to do that over a little over a half decade, so around 6 years end to end to write the book.
I mean, first of all, that it's a tremendous book because I've really enjoyed it personally. Mark is the one that introduced me to it a while ago, and then I saw you liked one of our tweets on kind of this topic, and I was like, wait, why are we not talking? So I think the level of research that you did was really unique because I never read a book that felt like you actually knew what was going on. So how did you know what was going on?
I'm glad you started with that question. I really appreciate it because it allows me to talk about something I don't really talk about that often, but I sifted through 6 gigabytes of email. Someone at the time, this is crazy if you can believe it, somebody saved this is funny. I haven't really talked. Somebody saved a bunch of their corporate email from that era, and it was in these like old Outlook files, like way
Oh
old
my
format.
God.
And at the end of an interview with this person, and I'm not going to reveal their name, but at the end of the interview, this person says, I have these old email files I've kept. They must be somewhere. Maybe I could stick them in a Dropbox for you. And I had to do the thing where you have to act kind of nonchalant and cool and think, yeah, okay, yeah, that'd be fine. If you get around to that. And inside I'm thinking, like, this is pay dirt if you do it.
Hey,
So he
Derek.
goes on, he puts the files in a Dropbox folder, sends me an email saying, hey, I stuck these in, feel free to do with them what you will. Just obviously like keep my personal stuff out of anything used. And I don't think he thought I would ever go and like download them or use them. But of course, what I do is I download them, use them, create like 3 flash drive copies, stick one in my closet, tell one about my best friend, like sort of like the Mission Impossible type situation where I'm like, oh, this is totally going to like self-destruct on me. Or there's be some like government agent that breaks down the door and me to
Oh
hide
my
it. Right?
God.
So I have this, but what I had was a day-by-day accounting of how the company came to be. I had every company newsletter that highlighted every milestone. I had employee reflections after 9/11 saying how people felt after the towers went down. I had Elon's resignation note to the company when he left the company. And so just artifact after artifact. So if the reading has like a feeling of like you're there, it's because in a funny way, like when you go back through all these like a mountain of emails, you are there. You're just like reliving it, ex post.
That is pretty incredible. And then did you, and I don't know, I can't remember, did you actually get to interview any of the guys or was it
Yes,
just?
I interviewed 300 people, including Elon, Peter
Okay, that's what
Thiel,
I thought.
Max, etc. I mean, I interviewed almost all, I think all but one of the original board members. There was one to join later in the life cycle, and I did not interview him. But all the board members, all the original co-founders, a ton of employees, and I would say like not just at the C-suite level, but I like found administrative assistants, people who did the benefits, firms they contracted with. I actually had this really interesting experience, which was I had this idea in my head, like, I wonder what someone who was like getting services from this company, or like what if they used a vendor for something? What did the vendor say? So I found a vendor and I reached out to the vendor and I said, hey, I'm writing this story and about the origin. Do you remember signing a deal with, the company that was Elon's half of the company, X.com? Do you remember signing a deal with X.com? And he goes, oh, that was the craziest experience. Let me tell you about it. So we jump on the phone and he shares the experience of he worked with banks and he had never worked with a tech startup before. And he said, we could not believe the pace, the time that elapsed between when we signed the agreement and when they deployed our technology was faster than we'd ever seen. And he's like, it still sticks out in my mind as like different than every one of our other customers. So wow. I included that in the book. But I had, what I was trying to build, because I had the benefit of history, was like, what did it feel like at the time? What were they thinking about? Who were they talking to? Those sorts of things.
What was maybe the 2 or 3 biggest takeaways that either you or people that you've talked to that read it have from the book?
I would say the first and maybe the most important, particularly for your audience, it's an enormous undertaking to build a startup, and it is incredibly hard. And that is a feature, not a bug. Like I think, part of what there's been one reaction to the book that I've gotten from a few people who are founders who say it's therapeutic. And the reason it's therapeutic is because they see the names that they look up to, right? People like Reid Hoffman, the creator of LinkedIn, or the co-founders of YouTube. And to know that these people had a time when they didn't have it all figured out is, I think, really powerful. But what I would say that the sort of other side of that, the inverse of that, is just recognize, like, for them, this was an enormous struggle to build this company from scratch and take it to an IPO, then get it acquired. So I would say, like, one, it's a big, obvious takeaway, but the important thing is the texture of the difficulty in the book. Like, you can see the moments when PayPal almost goes under.
Wow,
and that's
crazy.
I would say the second thing's a little counterintuitive, but I did a long riff in the middle of the book about how PayPal got its name and like the importance of naming. They hired this incredible person, SB Master, who runs a naming firm. They did a contract with her to come up with the name PayPal. And I found her, tracked her down, like hustled to get an interview. And it was like a master class on how to name things. Like because she was a poet. She studied, she sort of designed her own major as an undergrad, but she had a pretty humanities focused like undergraduate education. And then she went to Harvard B School and she wanted to find a way to like merge her like love of words with the business experience. And she gave me this like incredible, like, here's what the name they came with. Here's how I thought about the name. Here's why I was in favor of the name PayPal. Here's why we did this. Here's the look and feel. I mean, everything. And that, I would say, for people who would poo-poo that decision, like, it is a critically important choice, and it is one of the most important business decisions you will make. Not sort of a kind of like aesthetic decision, let's say, but it's actually like a strategic business decision, and it deserves a lot of rigor. And I tried to show in the book like how she actually came up with that name as opposed to others.
It drives me nuts, that topic, by the way, because how many companies do you see and they come up with something that I really have to think to pronounce, and I hate doing it. And it doesn't tell me what they do. And I'm like, you don't have $10 million to explain it to me. Because that's what it would take to maybe do that, maybe more.
So it's funny you said that you have a hard time pronouncing it. One of the names that was on the finalist list that she tried to axe pretty quickly was Cache. So PayPal was almost called Cache. And what she said is the team kind of liked it. And she said my problem with it fundamentally, and I expressed this, was embarrassment is a very strong emotion, and people may not know how to pronounce that name, right? And she said, and that's like, it'll turn somebody off to a brand almost right away. But in any case, it's like as a word person, it's one of my favorite things in the book. But I think it's also powerful
because that's like pet peeve. Like, it drives me nuts. And people come up with these names. I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, this is a bad choice. Can you rebrand immediately? And you see it sometimes. And then there's other ones that you tell me the name and I get what you do, and it makes me feel like I've heard of you guys.
Yes. And I would say everything by the way, she considers everything from like syllables to alliteration to the way the actual letters look, like where is the one letter relative to the other on size. I mean, we're talking a level of, I mean, granted, not everybody probably has to go hire her or pay, do something like that. But it shows you the importance and relevance and sort of power of a name. It's not like when you think about a business decision, that doesn't always feel like a business decision, but it was a big takeaway for me from the book, which I was like, wow, they really got a name that was ideal for them and that has stood the test of time. The company is still called PayPal. It's not,
it's like timeless. Wow, that's funny. I guess I didn't anticipate you saying that, but it makes so much sense to me. It drives me nuts when I see it handled incorrectly. So you came up with the book in February February, it's like a year ago, right? So it's February 2022.
Yeah, it came out on 2/22/22.
2/22. Hey, that's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
But the timing of this is actually really interesting. So what's the response been, and what have there been any events that have propelled this forward for you?
Oh, I mean, a bunch of them. I mean, Elon tweeted very nice things about me. That helped.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, well, there you go.
Somebody tweeted an image of the book, and they included him in their commentary, and he replied and said, "Friendly." He was very friendly to me. He said nice things about me.
Oh,
That was
wow,
nice.
that's
That
great.
certainly
Okay, that's
propelled
awesome.
things forward.
Yeah.
Better than him not liking it.
Yeah, right.
And then I would say the other thing is, how to put this? Like, there hasn't been a cultural portrayal of tech that is anything but bad. And we sort of forget that, like, particularly, let's like go to the sort of the kind of engineers in an organization. They are generally there. Some part of their motivation for being there is like they want to build cool things with other people who like to build cool things.
Right.
And there's no desire there to kind of like, there's no utopian grandiosity. There's no desire to like take over the world. None of that. It is really just sort of fundamentally that they live in this one era of human history where typing into a device and producing code can also change the sort of outcomes around us, right? And that's a creative thing. It's like as creative as art or writing, And I didn't get the sense that there were other cultural objects, whether TV shows, books, documentaries, or whatever. I mean, I would say actually documentaries are an exception, but there weren't many things that portrayed the creativity, the kind of humor, the fun at the heart of a lot of these enterprises. I think that's what's propelled it forward. I had people say to me, like, I had one person message me on Twitter and say, thanks for just like not treating all of this as doom and gloom, because I like my job and I think it's fun and interesting,
That's amazing.
And it's not that I run away from like some of the ethically challenging things that PayPal had to do. Like, imagine if you build a payment system and it suddenly becomes used in terrorist financing or to sell drugs or to anything else. You as a company have a responsibility to figure those things out. Sure. But it doesn't mean that the product you design is like fundamentally ruining the world.
Well,
right?
Today there would be there's a segment of very loud, I'm not even sure it was really real people, I don't think it is, that would try to do so much damage to that. I think we saw it with Twitter.
Yeah.
Here's a guy that said, this is nonsense. I'll put my money on the line to try to address a wrong that I see. Whether I agree with this or that, there's something underneath this. And he's with Matt Taibbi especially, he's exposed some crazy stuff. And it's like he just takes so many slings and arrows, and it's orchestrated, of course, a lot of it. But it's kind of crazy because can you imagine if PayPal was started today?
Oh, it would be. I mean, and to be honest, look, and to be clear, like a lot of your work is connecting with people who are having to start things today under what I would describe as like a lot of duress. But I think the thing that I took away from it was that that you have in Silicon Valley, but just in technology in general, like there is really powerful and interesting creative work being done to design these companies. And when we only do this, when we only look at the headlines, like it's really hard to miss that there's some junior engineer who is really, really proud of some decision they made that changed the color on a button or changed the results on an A/B test. And for them, the thrill that they get from that, the only reason I know that it's true for me is because there's a thrill you get when you find the right word for a particular sentence, or when you cut something from a paragraph and it totally hangs together. And you know this feeling. It's the greatest thrill there is. There's like no high that can achieve that, right? I saw in engineering something similar, and in the building of a company, something similar as well. And I tried to approach the task of putting the book together like that. But I think that's like part of the reason it took off is because I was somebody saying, like, what if we just dug a little bit and saw what it takes to build a company, how people come to it in all kinds of random ways, and what can result from it, and what can result from it, which is not just wealth, but it was actually like professional experience for a generation of people in this one place at this one time, which is what which is what you're trying to build.
Totally. I mean, it's interesting that you say it that way. Exposing it wasn't exposing some nefarious thing. There was a creative endeavor. And for me, a big part of trying to build this type of community and tell this story as well, particularly about the Keiretsu, which it ain't perfect. It's, well, what's the good part? Let's take the best from it. Is I don't want to hang out with people that haven't done anything. I only want to hang out with creators, makers, and doers. So how do I do that? I think entrepreneurs are the ultimate of that, and they change the world. That's who changes the world. So all these other nefarious ideas, these really cynical concepts are out there trying to label people and point people by people that, one thing that I was raised with was nobody's ever erected a statue to a critic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would, and
Maybe
look, I would,
Roger Ebert is the exception.
maybe, yeah, maybe he's using
I don't know. Is he have a
but
statue somewhere?
you're right. You're right. I would
No,
say
so
like,
that's what I want is a community of people that are doing real things and are actually working on problems that are important.
yeah, and I think I will say that people ask like, what do how is it that these people went off and did the PayPal thing again and again, with YouTube and
Right.
LinkedIn and
Repeat it.
Tesla and
Great.
I would say that like there is a generative part of that ecosystem that started at PayPal that was a joy to study. Like the joy was knowing like, oh, these people, like, even when I would have conversations with them, they were sort of creating ideas in mid conversation,
That's what you get, right? They're
and
like,
who
oh,
doesn't want to be around that? Like, who doesn't
right.
want to be
It's
around that?
inspiring.
It's inspiring, and I would say that it actually like it gets you to think much grander about your own ambitions, like when you're around people like that. And people ask sort of like the PayPal Mafia. It sounds so well. Really, what it was a group of people who went through a very hard experience together, and later invested in and helped each other with their ventures. And I'll tell you one great story. This is a story from like a meta story. It's a story about the creation of the book. I was interviewing Luke Nosek, who's one of the co-founders of Peter Thiel and Max Levchin's part of the company, which is Confinity. He was a co-founder. He's a University of Illinois person who knew Max. And we had a long series of interviews. He was really generous with his time. And we're in the middle of an interview, and he gets a phone call, and he holds the phone to me and he says, "Oh, it's Ken Howry,"
Oh, wow.
who I've known for 20 years because of PayPal. He goes in the other room to take the call. He comes back and says, he said something like, "Jimmy, that'll show you, like, these are still the people I'm closest to in the world. But, they're still the people that I do this
Yeah,
kind of work with."
that's great.
And he said, and he's like, if you want like a living illustration of the point of what you're trying to do or the point of your book, it's that we all did really meet at this place and it shaped who we are and how we work together. And so I admire what you're doing with that because you're trying to construct it, like to build it from sort of the end state to the, to here, like we're sort of constructed in reverse.
I there was something I was going to mention too, but I think that is so encouraging, and it gives you, they're in the end they're just friends that are helping each other, and I think you even saw that in 0 to 1. And I don't know the author who wrote I don't know if Peter did that himself. I guess he did write it himself.
It was Peter
right?
and Blake Masters were the co-authors.
Okay, Blake Masters, that's who it was.
Yeah.
And I think when you read that, you get a glimpse into, it's just cut through it, but he's just saying very basically, like, this is not about competing, right? He's saying create your own monopoly. This is not about competition. This is about doing something unique, which is really the ultimate creation. And I think that was the thing I took away from it. And he can be a very, like, a little bit robotic and dry person, it seems like, but he's like so intuitive about stuff. That's what it really boils down to. When you read 0 to 1, it's like, I get it. Like, this is a creative endeavor for him. And it's not about trying to dominate the world. It's not trying to fight people and exhaust yourself and lose. It's about doing your own unique thing. And that was one of the things that reinforces what you're kind of saying with it. There's like,
and I would pick up on something you said about the friendship piece. I did it's funny, I did like several, a page and a half of a riff about the friendship thing, because friendship is like an interesting thing unto itself, right? And you do wonder about mixing business and friendship sometimes. And PayPal is a great example of a place where it mixed very well for the most part. And I kind of like thought about it, and I would ask questions of the people I was interviewing, like, wait, how did this work, and what was it like? And there were definitely tensions, but somebody said something to me where they said, what friendship gave us was trust built in, and the trust was that we could be honest about the work and know that the person wasn't attacking us; they were attacking the work, right? And because we were friends, what someone said is it accelerated all of the things we could do together because we didn't have to like, hey, listen, I would like to give you some feedback, and there's
nonsense,
no
right? It's
wind
not
up.
genuine.
There's no threat clearing.
Yeah,
right?
That's really.
By the way, I'm simplifying, but I think you can take my point, and it's again, it's not my observation. It's somebody who worked there. He said, friendship. This actually this person who was very mild mannered. His name is David Wallace. He ran customer service for a period, and he was came as a friend, and he said, I would not have been able to speak up because I'm a more reserved person naturally if I was not among friends, right? And that's interesting. And like, it doesn't work in every place. There are definitely hazards to it. Like, it'll test friendships as well. But I think there is something to be said for it. And I think that's like one of the things I tried to kind of capture in the book.
And it's so interesting even seeing today, because they're all much older and they're all doing their own thing, but there's this common theme, if you will, of, well, Reid Hoffman is very different from Peter Thiel, couldn't be more different, done similar things, obviously have commonality there, who's also very different from Elon. Is, and David Sachs is another animal, right? And you see it on the All In podcast, you see what he's all about. But it's almost like that, the thing they all agree on is first principles, which is, in the end, none of this changes that we're together. We're in this together.
Yeah, and I would say what they were in.
Right? That's what friendship to them is. It's like, I accept that we're different. It's not going to threaten anybody.
No, if anything, they want different. I mean, that's like what was interesting about my interactions with Peter in particular, and Peter as a recruiter for the company and like recruiting many different kinds of people is, people miss that within the first group of like PayPal employees, you had people who could not be more different from him and from each other, right? People who even didn't get along, but he saw some value in that friction. And it was like, it regularly, I would have the experience of interviewing somebody who would say to me, I don't know why Peter took a chance on me. Like they
Wow,
would say,
really?
yeah, again
That's
and
crazy.
again and again and again. It was actually one of the things that if you were to plot a histogram of comments, that was like really up there, right?
Interesting.
And I think you're right. The part of it is intuitive. I think part of it is certainly analytical. I mean, there's a bunch of reasons.
It's
And this is my
ideas, thinking.
yeah,
right?
my book wasn't a book about him. It was a book about PayPal, but it was also a book about how people got to the company. And part of the value of the story is like recognizing like some of these people you would not have anticipated that they would end up working on a payments platform, but they did. And so maybe readers will get something out of that too.
Wow, what a great endeavor. I really applaud you. This feels like one of those like opuses that you probably feel so excited about that you created. I know it's always tough when you're going through it, and then it's like, God, am I ever gonna get this thing out? You get that thing going on. So, but you're there. This is amazing.
No, I'm there, and it's striking the right kinds of chords, I think, which is to like remember the humanity of some of these people, to remember that there was a time when they weren't all powerful, and things were much more uncertain.
Right.
And I think the other thing is like the book's not just taken off in the States, but it's taken off abroad, which is really cool to see, because a lot of tech hubs and packs in other places really look to these people for, models, inspiration, thinking, etc.
I love it. What a great endeavor. I'm so happy that someone took this on and that it was you. What's next for you? And is there going to be a movie?
So there's a movie and a sort of film adaptation in the works. There's a guy named Mark Goffman who did a show called Umbrella Academy on Netflix.
Oh, of course, yeah.
He's taking the lead on turning this into something. And I told him, I said, it's your project. Awesome. I'm there if you want me, but the sort of Hollywood joke is like the best writer of a book is a dead writer, because then you can't like provide your
don't interfere with the script, man.
Exactly.
Unless your name's Dan Brown, who you didn't really write a book, man. You wrote a script.
That's funny.
Rail's a writer.
I'm sort of I'm in that place of like what post sort of a founder, kind of like finishing up one project and starting to hunt around for my. I just finished up a book proposal. It's another tech history, and hopefully it goes somewhere. And I'll come back on and talk to you about it.
Let's go. Well, okay, so we talked about this before. We want to do some events together. I'm looking forward to that. I think we got some really good ideas there, and there's commonality. Is your next book going to be about General Magic?
It's not, but I love the documentary about it. It's a phenomenal documentary. And that story is great, but that story has been told so well with that documentary.
Yeah, that was really
nobody needs a book on it. I mean, I think there is a book on it, but nobody needs my book on it, because if you're interested in that story, go watch the documentary. It's so good.
A great documentary.
Yeah.
I just remember, it was funny because it inspired me a long time ago in the 90s. And nobody knew about General Magic then.
Yeah.
I remember it was like the prodigal son too, was when Jobs was out, he was at Next, and then there was General Magic doing the mobile stuff, and I was in the mobile industry. So I was always like, doesn't anybody remember General Magic? Did you know? And then I was always following like Andy Rubin.
Yeah.
Like, this guy made Sidekick. This guy made Android. Do you guys know who this guy is?
I know.
It's like crazy.
It's an unbelievable. Yeah, it's another one of the packs,
crazy.
The clusters.
Totally
right?
a pack. And I read. I actually. It's funny because I started writing about that in Form Your Own Pack, and then I found out about the documentary on the plane. I was like,
That's funny.
This. I love this.
That's
This is what I
amazing.
was trying to tell people about.
Yeah, no, it's a living, breathing example of it. I mean, it really is. And
So
that company
cool.
did not succeed, right? The other thing about that documentary, I mean, spoiler alert, like it it was it's a story of failure and a
It
story
is,
of
man, but
ambition, but also like what people can do when they're together, right? Like it's
absolutely.
amazing. I mean, I thought it was an amazing documentary, but that's why nobody needs a
It
book
was
on
great. And it's really like for me, it was like watching the mobile industry again
it.
from something I was a part of that, eventually became the smartphone, but being a part of that history and then seeing these guys who, to your point, it was up in flames because it was too soon. It was too
That's
soon.
right.
That's what it boiled
Yeah, it
down
was
to.
too soon. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
the iPhone before there was an iPhone.
But they didn't quit.
They did
Those
not
two
quit.
guys particularly went on to do crazy things, including Nest, including Android and
Yeah.
iOS. That's all.
Yeah,
That's
just a
all.
few, things.
iPad, the iPhone, whatever. Oh my God. All right, Jimmy, where do people find the book? And is there anything else we haven't touched on you think we should?
No, they can find it on Amazon. It's called The Founders. I'm on Twitter at Jimmy A. Soni. I love hearing from readers. And no, we covered so much ground. This is so fun. I mean, I'm like walking on sunshine after this. This is
Let's
great.
do it again. I'm all on the collabs. If you want to do a podcast, I will co-host with you.
Love
Jimmy,
it.
thank
I
you
would
so
love
much.
to
I'm
do it.
really appreciate, first of all, that you responded. I know I kind of used Mark's name to make sure that happened, but
It's
thank
okay.
you,
He's
Mark
immense.
Gerald.
We talked to him. He's good. He was
Yeah,
totally great
Mark's a
about
good
it.
friend. All right, Jimmy, I look forward to seeing you
Awesome.
soon, and I hope everybody runs out and grabs a copy of The Founders because I've enjoyed it, and I know that they will if they're interested in anything to do with startups. So I look forward to following that journey and whatever comes next.